Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin and for today's video we are going to be talking about my all-time favorite books with my favorite people. That was cheesy, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is actually a video that you guys have been commenting more and more that you've wanted to see, so I figured I should do it. Also, I apologize if I look like I'm in a little bit of pain. I am. But I really wanted to film this video. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up now. We're gonna talk about my favorite books of all time because I'm sure I'm not gonna shut up once I start talking about them. So this video's going to be long enough. We're gonna start with the books that I don't physically own, and it's ridiculous because they're my favorite books of all time, so you would think I own them, but I don't. And I only have two that I don't physically own. One of them, actually, technically, I do own it, but I lent it out to a teacher of mine, and I haven't gotten it back yet, so who knows if I ever will. But that book is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I'm sure if you've watched my most recent videos lately, then you would know that this is one of my favorite books of all time because I haven't shut up about it. I can't explain why I like this book without getting really personal about some things that I don't even talk about to my closest friends. We're not going to do that, especially not on the internet where literally anyone can access it. But basically, at the time that I read this book, I was going through a lot, I was grieving, and this book showed me that all of my feelings surrounding grief were valid and normal. And it also reminds me constantly, because I reread this book every single year. I rewatch the movie every year at least once, if not multiple times. Human nature is to have conflicting feelings about everything. So you can want someone to die so that your pain can go away and it's not impending doom over your head, but you can also want them to not leave yet. You can be mad at someone but still really miss them and love them, and all of those things are completely normal but also completely valid. And as someone who struggles with their mental health a lot and consistently has very conflicting feelings all of the time— my ring light's not on, I'm stupid. There we go. Do I need to restart this whole video? I'm not doing it, sorry. Anyway, as someone who struggles with their mental health and having very conflicting feelings literally every single day, it's a good reminder, and it makes me feel a little bit better that I'm not the only one who, like, some things just don't make sense. I feel one way, but I also feel the exact opposite at the same time, and most of the time I don't understand it. I understand it, but I also don't, you know what I mean? So I love this book for that. It's super short, but it's also so emotional. And what I love is that the movie adaptation, I honestly think this is the best adaptation I've ever seen because it so closely mirrors the book, it so closely mirrors the illustrations, and everything that I had pictured in my head is just so well done. But the biggest tell to me is that the movie makes me cry the exact same way that the book did. And I feel like that's really hard. It's really hard to make me cry in a book. For whatever reason, I don't do it tons, even though I cry every single day. You would think that books could accomplish this easily, but they don't. And then the fact that the movie was so well done that it makes me sob equally as hard. It's not as hard to make me cry in movies, but once I've already read the book, if I've cried in that, the chances are that I might tear up a little bit at the movie, but like not nearly as much as I did the book because words are more powerful for me, which is why it takes a lot for me to cry. But when I do cry, it's like the floodgates have been open and we need to build a dam. I think A Monster Calls is honestly my all-time favorite book. Nothing can beat it. So I don't know why I started with it because everything following this is technically below it. But A Monster Calls is god tier for me. So the next one that I don't own physically is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. Again, you've heard me talk about this quite a bit if you've been around for a while or you've seen some of my more recent videos where I've talked about it. A common thread amongst all of these books is that most of them had made me cry at one point or another, and seeing as that is so difficult, it like exquisite 5 out of 5 stars almost immediately if they can succeed that. So this also has to come on here because following A Monster Calls, this is the book that has made me cry the second hardest ever. This is a novella, actually. It's less than like 100 pages, but Frederick Bachman is a wizard with words. I am seriously blown away every single time I read one of his books. In this book, we're following a little boy named Noah and his grandpa who has a disease. We're not sure if it's Alzheimer's or dementia. It's never specifically stated, but he has a disease that's causing him to lose his memory very, very quickly, and he kind of has to explain to Noah that he's not going to remember who he is, but it's nothing personal. He still loves Noah, and he doesn't know how to do that because Noah's young and didn't really know, like, hasn't really been exposed to those kinds of illnesses before, hasn't really lost many people close to him yet, and he and his grandpa are best friends. It's the conversations that they have and just watching this older man come to terms with his own illness and how that's affecting him and how that's affecting his family and how that's affecting all of their relationships. And it's done in less than 100 pages perfectly. The execution on this is just immaculate. I don't know how Frederick Bachman does it. I aspire to be as talented a writer as he is, genuinely. But I think what made this book for me was the audiobook, because the narrator for this has the perfect old man voice. I don't know what it is, but his voice for this, I want to listen to everything that this man narrates. I don't even know who it is, but I want to listen to everything that he narrates because his voice is so calming. Anyway, and every morning the way home gets longer and longer. I also listen to this every single year because why not? Sometimes I need a good cry. Oftentimes I need a good cry. And this takes less than an hour to achieve that. So moving on to the books that I physically own. The next one is actually a poetry collection. And if you follow me on Instagram, I am so obnoxious about this. But that is The Sweetest Kind of Poison by Katie Wismer. This book also made me cry in an airport, so that's amazing. I love crying in public, and I'm not just talking about a couple tears. I was sniffling and it was not cute. Luckily this was pre-COVID, so I wasn't wearing a mask and trying to keep all that in. I mean, maybe a mask would have been better actually, I don't know, but either way. The Sweetest Kind of Poison is a poetry collection by Katie Wismer that kind of chronicles the cycle, I guess, of a toxic relationship and the mindset that follows once you're out of that toxic relationship. So falling for that person and remembering that, and then trying to get over them and all of the horrible manipulative things that they at one point said to you, and realizing that they're not true, which is a really, really hard thing to do, and then trying to be better but struggling. You don't want to be like them, but you don't know how to be the person you were before them, and that's really hard. And I just loved this so much. Again, I think I read this at the perfect time because I was going through something which we won't talk about. But this was everything that I wanted to say but didn't know how. And I appreciate this book so much for that. So this will probably always be my favorite poetry collection just because of what it did for me. I think I've read this 3 times at this point, and I fall in love with it more and more every single time. I love every single poem in this book, and I can't wait for her to write more poetry. She does have another poetry collection out, which I also own and thoroughly enjoy, but this one just means a little bit more to me because the subject matter hit a little bit closer to home, and poetry is very subjective. So that's not to say that her other poetry book isn't great, but this one just strikes a chord. Oh, another one that I don't have with me that I forgot because I don't have it with me. I lent it out to a friend. It was only a couple days ago, so I know I'm getting it back. But that is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This, let's guess what I'm about to say. Also made me cry, and in public as well. So good. Love that for me. My streak is just impeccable with that. I don't care if anybody sees me cry. I don't like it, but at this point with my mental health, I'm yeah, I'm crying. And in this book, we are following Miles and Tate, if I remember correctly, and their friends with benefits relationship, which has 2 rules. Don't ask about the past and don't what did I just say? Don't ask about the past and don't expect a future, which Miles has created. Tate didn't. And slowly Tate starts to fall for Miles, but Miles has this very cold exterior. It's very hard to get to know him, and so she kind of feels like she's in that alone while they continue this very physical relationship, and she develops even more of a connection with him that way. It's hard, especially because once you read the chapters from Miles' point of view and the past and learning everything that he goes through, it's intense. Those were not the chapters that broke me necessarily, but they were still really, really difficult. So content warning. See, this is bad because I read on a tweet somewhere or an Instagram post that if the content warning is a spoiler, it's just used for shock value, and that's not good. So I'm not going to give the content warning because it is a bit of a spoiler, but look up content warnings for this book for sure. But this is still my favorite Colleen Hoover that I've ever read. Hi, I would like to clarify, first of all, don't mind me. I think I'm getting sick. Pretty sure it's not corona, but pretty sure I'm still getting sick, so that's lovely. I'm going to be doing some reevaluating about this book. I'm also going to go ahead and give the content warnings. Loss of a loved one, and I don't remember who specifically it was, so I can't say if it's like parent, child, but loss of a loved one is like the big content warning here. And I'm going to be doing some reevaluating on this being my favorite book. The parts of the book that I enjoyed were unrelated to the content warning. That wasn't what made me cry or anything. It was sad, but that wasn't what got me. So I'm still going to be doing some reevaluating. I just wanted to clarify that while this is, for now, my favorite Colleen Hoover, I'm going to take some time to really think about it. But I still wanted to include it in this video because it did make me cry, and at one point it was a favorite book of mine. So yeah. And one of my favorite books of all time, and it's a romance, which I never anticipated would be a favorite of mine, but I'm starting to love the romance genre very much. It's quickly becoming my second favorite of all time. So now moving on to some fantasy, which I claim is my favorite genre of all time, but I haven't read very much of it lately, so I don't know if that's even true anymore. I'm kind of having an identity crisis. Anyway, if you're not new to my channel, then you would know that my favorite series of all time is the Wayward Children series. I've read all of the books, which is a great indicator that it's my favorite because I have a very difficult time keeping up with series, but I am seriously obsessed. But my favorite from the series, I would have to say, is In an Absent Dream by Shauna Maguire. I love Shauna Maguire so much. I can't wait to read more of her work. One of the other books on this list is also by her, but underneath her pen name. I'm sure you can guess what it is already, because I don't shut up about that one either, but we're going to talk about this one first. This one is my favorite because, first of all, I love Lundy's character so much. I love how magical and whimsical this series is. It kind of reminds me of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but if every child in this series was Alice, their Wonderland is something different from the next one. Some of them are nonsensical, just like Wonderland. Some of them are very logical, and that's how Lundy's is. And I loved the goblin market and the use of fair value in this. This one just makes sense, and that's because Lundy is in a logical world. It also just made sense to me. I feel like if I was a wayward child and I had a door, my world would be very, very similar to Lundy's. Maybe just a little bit more emotional. I can't explain it. I just can't. And I feel like that's pretty common with most people in their favorite books, which is a whole discussion video that I've debated making multiple times. But talking about your favorite books is really, really hard. You would think it would be easy, but it's not. For me, it's way easier to talk about the books that I hated than the books that I love. But when it's super strong on either part of the scale, it becomes very dangerous territory. Either way, anyway, we're gonna stop talking about that, otherwise I'll probably cry. Let me know if you want that discussion video. Lundy's world makes sense to me. Lundy is probably the character that I feel the most connected to and relate to the most, which probably why her world makes sense to me. But Lundy's story is heartbreaking, and I love it. So, In an Absent Dream. If you haven't read this series yet, please do yourself a favor and do it. Don't start with this one because you'll be spoiling yourself, but you should read it. The next book by Seanan McGuire, or should I say Mira Grant, her pen name, that is on my favorites list, Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. Obviously, some people have mixed reviews on this. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Easily, hands down, no questions asked. This is the book that made me believe in mermaids and also instilled my fear of them, which is very vast. Now I'm a little bit scared of the ocean too. I always used to love the water, now I don't trust it. In this book, we are following a large cast of characters, but I would say that our main character is Tori, and she is a scientist, and she goes on this expedition, I guess, in the ocean with a team of other scientists, because 7 years ago, they went, not very many scientists, but her sister was on one of these expeditions to make a mockumentary about mermaids. They didn't think they were going to find anything. They went out to the Mariana Trench. There were no bodies of the crew left, and the ship washed ashore and it was shipwrecked. It was like destroyed. And like I said, there were no bodies to be found in the water or on the ship, and all they have is a little snippet of an unidentified creature swimming in the water that people presume is a mermaid. So 7 years later, a group of scientists is going out to find out what really happened. They're not telling anyone about it, but they are filming it. And so some of the scientists there don't believe in mermaids, but they just want to do this research in the Mariana Trench because it's an incredible opportunity. But some of them do, and very much like Tori, they want to find them and kind of get vengeance and learn more about these creatures that took her sister's life and so many other people's lives that had families and expected to come home. This book is a science fiction thriller horror, and I freaking loved it. It's a genre that I really want to get more into, so if you have recommendations for science fiction horror, please let me know because I'm obsessed. I loved how, like, my favorite part about this book was all of the science. I am not a science major at all, like not even close, but I loved the science of this so much. It was just so good. It was so good. I am trying to get more people in my life to read it. The people that I have gotten in my life to read it, one of them loved it, the other one hated it. Sorry, Carrie. I don't really know what else to say about this book other than it's amazing, and I think that everyone should read it. I know not everyone's gonna like it, but I just want more people to believe in mermaids because right now I sound stupid, but like there's a possibility that they're out there and we haven't found them, and I kind of want to keep it that way, but they're also like really smart. And also, this is a mild spoiler, but the dolphins. Okay, I'm done talking about this. I just sound like an idiot now. Next, we have another science fiction, and it's the first book in a series that I haven't continued. Shocking, it really is. What's interesting about this one is that it's my brother's favorite book, and I was very hesitant to go into it because it's my brother's favorite book. And I just kind of assumed, I'm gonna sound like a horrible human being for this, but please allow me to explain myself. I have found that when people aren't super into reading and they pick up a book, the book, like, they'll recommend it to me and I'll read it and it's not that good because I have a vast collection and I've read a lot, and so like I've just read better. So I was apprehensive to pick this book up because he doesn't like to read, and I was like, what if it sucks? And I feel horrible for saying that. I sound like a terrible person. Eric, I'm sorry for doubting you. I love you deeply. But I was nervous. Those were my reservations. And then I read it and I was like, oh, wait, like it's actually good. And I think it's one of my favorite books now. And he was like, see, I told you. And I was like, I don't need the attitude. But anyway, we'll stop dancing around it. The book is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I read this after I graduated high school and it was so freaking good. I'm obsessed with it, and I have been wanting to reread it ever since I read it for the first time, And I really want to continue on with the series. I know that there are a bunch of spin-off series in this universe, and I definitely want to explore those because my sister-in-law said that they were all really, really good, and I think that her tastes are more refined than mine. But yes, the thing that I loved about this book the most was how smart Ender is as a character. I had not ever read a character as intelligent as Ender, and all of the different war strategies in this book were so good and so intriguing. I just fell in love with it. I loved how isolating Ender's intelligence was to him. Not because I wanted him to suffer. I love him as a main character. I did not want that for him at all. But I felt that it was really realistic because oftentimes a lot of intelligent people feel very alone because sometimes people just don't understand them. I'm not trying to claim that that is the way that I feel or that I have very much intelligence at all. Not how I'm trying to come across. I just feel like that's probably how intelligent people feel. And that's why I'm not intelligent. That's proof, because I don't know what I'm talking about. I also loved how this was set in space and all of the alien stuff. I just thought that that was super cool as well. But the main thing that I loved about this book was how intelligent it is and all the different strategies that were used, and it was so good. It was so good, and it was such a quick read. The last book that I have to talk about on this list is one that I read my freshman year of college, I think, around the same time that I read Ender's Game, and that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This, again, such a whimsical world, and I feel like my favorite books of all time have a few things in common. A very whimsical world that doesn't make a ton of sense, really smart characters and a lot of science/strategy, or they make me cry. Those are those are the main three things. And the crying typically comes from grief. Good thing I'm already in therapy, otherwise I would say that I need it. Caraval. We are following Scarlet Dragna, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I read this. She is trying to escape the life that her father has kind of laid out for her. He is a very abusive man and she cannot wait to escape him, but she's always wanted to go to this magical festival called Caraval. It's kind of like a carnival, but basically it's a game. You have to be invited. You can't just go, and the location changes every single year. A while ago it stopped because someone died, I believe, but it's back again for, I think, what they're claiming is the last time. And Scarlet and her sister Donatella get invited to go, and then Donatella goes missing. So Scarlet goes hoping that she can find Donatella there because she's told that she will, and Donatella is nowhere in sight. So Scarlet goes throughout Caraval with the help of Julian, and they're looking for her sister while also trying to win the game that is Caraval. And the only thing is, basically there's a saying, but I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's along the lines of nothing is as it seems. I loved this book. I loved the whimsy, and I need to finish the series. The second book I didn't love as much, but that's because I can't really say that. That's a spoiler. We are getting a different perspective in the second book, which is why I didn't like it as much as I loved this one, because this one was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. And the reason that I don't like it is because that perspective reminded me of my younger sister, and I just felt like I was reading a story through her eyes, and she was making all of the choices that I wouldn't make, because Scarlet and that character are exact opposites, and I very much relate to Scarlet. And some people don't like her character, and honestly, when I hear people say that, I'm like, oh, don't be friends with me then. So I am Scarlet to a T. So that's another reason that I love this book, because I would have made all of the same choices as Scarlet, pretty much. Anyway, those are all of my favorite books of all time. I know that my explanations for all of these books, didn't really make very much sense, and I apologize for that. But like I said, talking about your favorite books is really hard. Actually really hard. So, sorry, but I feel like a lot of people struggle with it. I hope that you guys enjoyed learning about what my favorite books are. I don't know why I've never really made this video before, but there you go. Thanks for asking for it and encouraging me to do it. I didn't know if it would be anything that anybody was interested in. So, Anyway, I love you all so much. I hope you're doing well, reading, mentally, and otherwise. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I really hope to see you all in my next one. Bye, guys. Should I turn my fairy lights on, too? I never do that, but I have them for a reason. Batteries are dead, so I guess that's a no.